Hey guys, it's Laura and welcome to our 1,000 subscribers celebration video. So in this video, I'm going to be answering all the questions that you sent in for me, as well as giving you personalized book recommendations if you requested some. So I'm going to be filming this video like throughout the week. So today's Monday. I'm going to start answering the questions I've gotten so far, and then I'll probably come back and answer more questions like midway through the week. And then on Friday, I'm going to come in and answer any more questions that I got, as well as announce the winner for the giveaway. So you're gonna see me in different outfits and stuff, but that's why, because I wanted to make sure that I get this video up on Friday. Okay, so I guess I'm just gonna go in order. So the first question is from Becky. What is one book that had a big impact on your reading life? I guess I'll go with the first one, and that is Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland I read, or had read to me when I was a little girl. I was a big fan of the Disney movie. But Alice in Wonderland was like my comfort book as a child. It was the book that I returned to again and again. I would read the poems again and again from Through the Looking Glass. It was just such an important story to me. Like, it was so nonsensical and ridiculous, and I really like held on to it. That had a huge impact on my reading life. Like, further on in the future, seeking out books that gave me that feeling was always what I was looking for. And then as for recommendations, she says, I'd like recommendations for some historical fiction with a touch of magic, and I've got you. So I actually read House of Rougeau by Jenny Jekyll in February, which by now you've probably, have you seen? No, not yet. I don't think I will have posted my wrap-up yet, but I will talk about it in my wrap-up. It is such a beautiful generational story that follows one family, the Rougeau family. So it starts off in the 1600s, I believe, on Martinique, on a sugarcane plantation. We're following a brother and sister that are slaves. Our main character, I forget her name. I'm so bad with character names, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. But the main character has the ability to call on spirits of plants to heal people. So she's a healer, and everyone throughout her family, we follow her family several generations down, and everyone in the family has some sort of special magical ability, but it's all very grounded in our world, in the real world. So it has just that touch of magic that I really appreciated. It was really a beautiful story, and I highly recommend it. But I also want to recommend The 10,000 Doors of January, which has a bit more than a touch of magic, but it is historical fiction. It follows a main character, January, who finds this book that leads her to magical doors. And it's just beautifully told. Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. So this is a historical fiction that has a touch of magic, and throughout the book, what's really fun is that we never know, is this really magic, or is it science? Is it something else? And I loved that about this book. We're following a small town along the River Thames, and one night this man comes in to this tavern, this inn, and he's holding a little girl in his arms, and the little girl is dead. Apparently they had some kind of mishap on sea. He finds her, he brings her in, and he collapses. And then a doctor is called, and she determines right away that the girl is dead, but then the girl comes back to life. So definitely pick this up if you haven't yet. Okay, next question is from Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and she says, what's the book that made you fall in love or rekindle your love for reading? And again, I have to say Alice in Wonderland, but as far as rekindling my love for reading, there was a point in like my teenage years where I kind of fell out of love with reading. I wasn't reading a lot, but when I was 19, I remember reading this book called Bad Kitty by Michelle Jaffe. If I can find it, I'll put a picture up. This was the first YA book that I ever read. So I went from reading middle grade when I was at the appropriate age into like not reading much, into reading adult romance, adult romance and adult mystery and cozy mysteries. So I never read a young adult book until I was 19, and I read Bad Kitty. And it had such an impact on me because it was hilarious, first off. It was the first time that I experienced that kind of humor in a book, but not only that, it was the first time that I saw myself in a book because the main character is mixed. Her mom's Jamaican, like mine, and her dad is white, and I mean, my dad's not white, but she has darker skin and big curly hair like I had, and it was the first time I ever saw someone who looked similar to me in a book, and it was just such an amazing experience at 19 years old. So that book, after reading that, I was determined to read more of the YA genre, and that just really set me off into my new reading journey, and I came to love YA. I came to love reading again. So that was definitely the book. I don't know what I would think of it now if I reread it because it was so long ago, but I loved it at the time. For a book recommendation, she says, I want a creepy, unsettling sci-fi that's not too horror since I'm still dipping my toes into that genre. Okay, this is difficult. I don't think I've read a lot of creepy sci-fi, but I have a few to recommend. So the first one I want to recommend is 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstead. This is a YA sci-fi. NASA is trying to drum up interest in space again because people are not interested anymore and they need funding. And so they decide to hold this contest where they get a bunch of kids from different... Have you read this one? Now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of feel like maybe you have, but if you haven't, they hold a contest for teenagers around the world. They select, I think, 4 or 5 teenagers to get sent on a trip to the moon. However, when they get to the moon, really creepy things start happening. I liked this book a lot. I didn't love it. I think it had its flaws as far as the writing was concerned. It is YA and it's an older YA, but I definitely think it's worth a read. It is very creepy, so keep that in mind. So the other one I want to recommend for you is Black Mad Wheel by Josh Malerman. Now, Josh Malerman is a horror author. However, I think that Black Mad Wheel is less scary and more creepy and unsettling. So we're following a band and they're kind of older, maybe a little washed up, and they get recruited by the US government to go to the Namib Desert in Africa to investigate this sound. And the sound is very strange because whenever the sound is heard, it renders equipment impotent. So no kind of electronics can be used during the sound. Not only that, but like things like guns is immediately shut down. And they recruit this band with them to investigate this sound. I think you might actually really like it. Next question is from Tiana J, and they say, scariest book you've ever read. Wow. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to go with And the Trees Crept In by Don Kurtagich. I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook has like a lot of sound effects and a lot of creepy voices and things like that, which I think definitely added to the experience of it being scary. But I think on its own as well, I've heard other people who have read it physically and just said it's a really scary book. Other than that, I've read a lot of books that are like creepy and unsettling and somewhat scary, but not scariest. Although I personally have a very high tolerance for what's considered scary, like especially reading a book. When it comes to watching scary movies, I'm a baby. I can't do it. But scary books don't tend to scare me. It takes a lot for them to scare me, and the Trees Crept In really did it for me. So definitely that one. And then personal recommendation, a book that makes you fall in love with love. Bonus for me if the female love interest is by POC. Okay, I have some for you. I haven't read a lot of romance. A lot of the romance that I love is in fantasy books where the romance is kind of like a subplot. So I only have a few that I can recommend for you, but I would recommend Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I adored this. It was a 5 out of 5 star romance book for me. It follows Chloe Brown, who is Black and deals with chronic pain, and she has like this near-death experience and decides to make a list to like get a life and, you know, live her life to the fullest before she dies. And so she does that, and she ends up recruiting Red, who is her building's superintendent, to help her out with fulfilling the list. A romance ensues. But I also want to recommend a YA. So if you're into YA, I recommend The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Nicola Yoon is, again, one of my favorite authors, and this book follows Natasha and Daniel. Natasha is Jamaican American. Her family is actually facing deportation the next day when she meets Daniel, and he tells her that he can make her fall in love with him in a day. And she is very like scientifically minded. She doesn't believe in love. He is a hopeless romantic, and the two of them together spend a day together that will just make you swoon. It'll make you fall in love with love for sure. I definitely recommend The Sun Is Also a Star. Sade or Sade? I'm not sure. The question is, sorry in advance, I have two. Is there a genre you just don't like? I used to say for the longest time that I'm not a fan of historical fiction. However, I've read some really good historical fictions like Once Upon a River and The House of Rougeau, so I don't know that I can really say that anymore. And I think that having a genre that I just don't like is not, well, okay, here we go. Erotica. I am not a fan of erotica. I don't like it. I don't mind sex in my books. I like sex in my books, but I have to have a story to go along with it, and most erotica doesn't really have much of a plot, to be honest. It's just a bunch of sex. So erotica, I would say, is a genre that I'm not into. Okay, and then the second question is, how many books do you own? Oh my god. I did not see that second question. I did not prepare. Okay, I have, let me check real quick because I have it written down. I have 158 books on my physical TBR. So those are all of the books here that I have not read. But as far as the books that I have read that are on my other shelves in the living room, I have no idea how many books are on there, but definitely more than here. So I would say maybe a good 250 to like a good 400 books maybe. I'll have to count, and when I'm editing I will put the number on the screen for you because I just don't know, and I'm kind of terrified of counting. So, but I'll do it for you. And as far as a recommendation, can you recommend some fast-paced fantasy books? Actually, you know what? I just finished reading The Prey of Gods by Nikki Drayton, and that is pretty fast-paced. There's a lot going on in it. It's kind of chaotic, to be honest, but in the best way. I really enjoyed it, and I'll talk about it more in my wrap-up, but Prey of Gods by Nikki Drayton is definitely a good fast-paced fantasy. Children of Blood and Bone, I would recommend Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly, one of my favorite books. It's like a Cinderella retelling, except it's following the ugly stepsister, and it takes place after the Cinderella story has taken place. Definitely recommend that one. Oh, Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir is definitely a good fast-paced one. It is a blend of sci-fi fantasy. It follows lesbian necromancers in space. You cannot go wrong. Okay, next question is from Mary Ella, and they say, I found your channel recently, so I'd like to know what is your favorite genre to read and who your favorite author is. Favorite genre, fantasy, for sure. But asking me what my favorite author is, are you kidding me? I have so many. I can't pick just one. But you have to know, since you're new here, you have to know that one of my all-time favorite authors that wrote my all-time favorite book is Erin Morgenstern. Okay, number one. Then I've got to say Brandon Sanderson. And then I've got to say N.K. Jemisin. Those three are my top three of all time and probably always will be. Okay, next question is from Anna. And they have asked, what book are you most excited to read in 2021, new release or backlist? Okay, my most anticipated book, I haven't mentioned this anywhere before, I don't think, but my most anticipated book of 2021 is Witches Steeped in Gold by Sienna Smart, okay? I'm so hyped for this book because this is a Jamaican-inspired fantasy. And I feel like, this is gonna sound dramatic, I feel like I've been waiting my whole life for a Jamaican-inspired fantasy. If you don't know, I'm Jamaican, and I've read a ton of like Caribbean-inspired fantasy, but never specifically Jamaican-inspired fantasy. And I'm dying to read this book. I put so much expectation on this book. I really hope that it's gonna be good because I need it. I need it. It's the one I'm most excited for. Yes. Anna also says, and I'd love to read a book that feels like summer. Warm, fun, exciting. The books that feel like summer to me are a lot of YA contemporary because that's what I tend to read in the summer, and I just think that young adult contemporary or romance is just so, it feels like summertime. Do you know what I mean? But the book that I'm recommending is not a YA romance, so I don't know why I said that. This is The Voice in My Head by Dana L. Davis. This is equal parts devastatingly sad and incredibly like hysterical laughter inducing. Does that make sense? While I was reading this, I was either laughing or crying. It's about twin sisters, Violet and Indigo. Violet is diagnosed with a terminal illness, and Indigo can't live without her sister, and so she decides to take her life. However, before she goes through with it, she hears this voice that says stop. If you take your sister to this specific place, your sister will live. And what ensues is like the most hilarious road trip that you have ever gone on, plus a lot of sadness because a sister who is terminally ill. So I mean, I recommend this book because I feel like it's such a good balance. It's not so incredibly sad that it's just a sad book, but it's not so incredibly like happy and upbeat that it's just that, you know what I mean? So I recommend this one. But I also want to recommend a YA contemporary, and that is There's Something About Sweetie by Sanjay Menon. I had a smile on my face the entire time I was reading this, much like Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Here's another recommendation. This one is so much fun, and it'll just make you smile. It'll make you happy. Both of these just have that feel-good effect, and so does this one, even though it's sad too. But if you're looking for just pure happiness, pure bliss, that's what these are. So I recommend both of these. The next question is from V. Hi V. She wants a recommendation. So her recommendation request is, I would love a fantasy recommendation. I really enjoy character-driven fantasy. Plot is great, but I need to get attached to the characters. And so she said that she's loved Robin Hobb and N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy, which, yes, it's so good. For character-driven fantasy, I want to recommend the Winternight trilogy by Catherine Arden, which the first book is The Bear and the Nightingale. This is such a beautifully written fantasy series, so if you love some of that like purple prose, I think this has it, but not too much. But also, the best thing about this is the character development. We get to follow Vasya, who is the main character, from the time she's a young girl to the time she blossoms into this strong, independent woman. It takes place in the 14th century Russia, so it's at a time where women don't have a lot of autonomy. She only has really two options in life, which is either to be sold off into marriage or to become a nun. And so she chooses to make her own path. And I think the character development was one of the strongest things in the Winternight trilogy. So definitely pick that one up. First one is The Bear and the Nightingale. I also want to recommend anything by Brandon Sanderson. I think that Brandon Sanderson does everything well, and a lot of people, you know, talk about Sanderson's world building, which is always incredible, and his magic systems, but I think that his character development is excellent as well. So anything Brandon Sanderson. And then I also want to recommend Spinning Silver, which is actually a standalone, so you might want to start here. Spinning Silver follows 3 different women. This also takes place in Russia, and we're following these 3 girls that are really just trying to forge out paths for themselves in a world that is not easy for a woman to live in. So definitely recommend this. And I have been filming for over half an hour, so I think I'm gonna cut it here for now, and then I will catch you in the next clip. Okay, I am back to film the rest of this video. So I think we left off with V's question. I gave her recommendation. So next we have Natalia. Natalia's question is, besides reading, what else do you like to do in your spare time? Reading, especially the past year, has really taken over my life and like left very little time for other things, but I love gardening. My mother was always and is still a huge gardener, and I was always outside with her in the garden when I was growing up, but I never really appreciated gardening for myself until I grew up. Gardening has been like my favorite thing. It relaxes me. I love being out in nature. I love the earth. I love feeling dirt on my fingers and planting and taking care of my plants. It's one of my favorite things to do. It makes me happy. So yeah, that's something I do. I also like to game. My husband actually got me this cute Switch Lite for Valentine's Day. So for that I was using his Switch. But I've been playing Animal Crossing and Child of Light, and I'm super excited to discover more games. I'm turning into a gamer now, like, I don't know, I guess so, but yeah, I've been loving this thing so much, so I've been doing that. But really mostly gardening is like my favorite thing. I've collected quite a bit of plant babies, so yeah. And then we've got Penny from Penelope the Paperback Cat, and she says, what's a time travel book that you most recommend? Penny, I don't know. I would like, the first thing that comes to mind is Recursion by Blake Crouch, but I'm pretty sure you've read that already. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. If not, pick that up. But that is the only one that I can think of. I have not read a lot of time travel books. Time travel is an element that I love, but I never get to read it in books. The The last book that I read that had time travel was the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness, which is not about the time travel at all. It just happens to be an element in there. So I wouldn't recommend that for the time travel, but what else? What else have I read with time travel? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't have a recommendation for you. I'm so sorry. I need to find more time travel books. I need to. I will. Okay, next we have Melissa Jade, and she has a couple of different questions. The first one, what is one book that you recommend to everyone? Okay, my favorite book, which is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I recommend that to everyone because I love it so much. It's my favorite book of all time, and I want everyone to read it. However, I know that that book isn't for everyone. So the one book that I would recommend to everyone would at least get something out of, is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which you probably know about. It was so popular right around the time it came out, and for good reason. I think that book does so many incredibly interesting things, and I think that it's a book that absolutely everyone should give a try. And then the second question is, what inspired you to start on Booktube? And it was really my love of reading, but I think it was like a combination of things. So it was when I read Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. And if you've read that book, you know that something happens at the end that is emotionally devastating. And I needed someone to talk to about it. A lot of my friends in real life at the time did not read, and so I had no one to talk about it. It was my brother, Tony, that told me that, you know, people do book reviews on YouTube, which I had no idea about. And I went on YouTube searching for a review of Lord of Shadows because I wanted like someone to share the emotions with. And I found Hannah from A Clockwork Readers channel. She had a vlog, or maybe it wasn't a vlog, maybe it was just like a spoiler review of Lord of Shadows. And then from her, I discovered the entire world of Booktube, and I was so in love with it that I was like, I want to do this too, because I love books and I want to talk about books, and I don't always have a lot of people to talk about books with. At the time I was working at a bookstore. I was actually a manager at a Books A Million, and I was working 45 plus hours a week, so I didn't think I had the time to put into it, but I kept getting, you know, encouraged to do it by my brother Tony, as well as my husband, and then eventually one day I just did it. Basically, we moved from Florida to California, and at that time I became a stay-at-home mom, so I had a lot more time on my hands, and I was like, maybe this is the time. And my husband really like encouraged me to do it. Yeah, you can do it, just do it. And so I did, and it was really just a love of the community. I had no idea that this existed until I stumbled upon it, and I'm so thankful that I did, because I just fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the way people talked about books and all the different videos that they did, and I'm like, I just want to be a part of this. So that's what it was. And then the third question, do you have any romance recommendations? I think I mentioned before, I haven't read a lot of romance. I do want to get more into romance, but I will recommend the A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole, which is one I read. I really enjoyed that one. There's a whole series involved with that one as well. Oh, The Reluctant Royals, that's what it's called. There's a whole series, so you start with Princess in Theory and keep going. They're all so good. I still haven't finished that series yet, but I will at some point. And then I also want to recommend Get a Life Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is another one I absolutely loved. It was a 5-star romance for me. And then also Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey was so good. Very steamy, but very good. All of these were very steamy. That's pretty much it for romance. Like, there's YA contemporary romance that I've really enjoyed. Like the one I mentioned before, There's Something About Sweetie. The Sun Is Also a Star. But I definitely need to read more romance. I do have some romance on my shelf, so hopefully I'll have more romance recommendations in the future, but that's about it for now. Okay, next question is from Chrissia. I hope I'm saying your name right. But Chrissia asked, what advice would you give new booktubers? My advice to new booktubers is just to be yourself. Don't look at what everyone else is doing and try to do what everyone else is doing. I think that you really need to find what you do well, and even if that's just simply sticking to the basics, doing wrap-ups, TBRs, hauls, or whatever, but find what you love doing, not necessarily what everyone else is doing, and you'll be golden. I think that like the hardest thing when you're first starting out, at least for me, was editing, because I didn't know how to edit videos. And I think it's so important, especially when you're first starting out, to make sure that you're editing your videos really crisply. Like, does that make sense? Like, make sure that you're cutting out pauses and and stuff like that, something that definitely flows freely. And I think that a lot of the time I make a lot of mistakes when I'm filming, a lot, and so I end up editing a lot. But editing and just being yourself, doing what you love doing, this can become just all the time that it takes, all the work that it takes to make a booktube channel. I don't think a lot of people realize the time that it takes to film, the time that it takes to edit, and how grueling that can be, and how much work goes into the production of one video. I definitely think that you need to enjoy this, okay? Because nobody's paying you. So you need to be able to enjoy what you're doing, and not get burnt out. And if you're just trying to do what everyone else is doing without really enjoying it, that's definitely not going to work for you long term. So just find what you enjoy doing, the videos that you enjoy doing. Don't worry about whether people are going to like it or not. People are going to find you who need to find you and want to be here. Yeah, just do what makes you happy. That's my advice. That's it. I know I'm going to completely butcher this next name, and I am so sorry. Minoic, I'm so sorry. I know I pronounced that wrong. But their question is, if you could live in any fictional world, where would you live? That is a good question. You know what popped up in my mind right away? Red London from the Shades of Magic series by V. Schwab. I just think that the world described and the magic that's used. Red London, if you don't know, like, that series focuses on parallel London. So there's 4 different Londons. There's Grey London, which is basically like our London, no magic. And then we have White London, Black London, and Red London. Red London is like abundant and full of magic and color and beautiful. So like, after all the events take place in the Shades of Magic series, I would love to live in Red London. I just think it would be so beautiful. Okay, and for a recommendation, they're asking for an LGBTQ plus magical realism book. I want to recommend Anna Marie McLemore, the author. I think that is their niche. That is what they write. They write queer magical realism. And the one book that I've read by them was Wild Beauty. I didn't love the story, but I loved the writing. Their writing is beautiful, stunning, poetic, lyrical. So definitely check out that author in general. But I also want to recommend Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. This is actually one of my favorite books, and I never get the chance to talk about it. And I don't want to say too much about it, but this is magical realism, and it is queer. There is a female-female romance, and it also takes place on this small island that's very like tourist heavy in the summers, because there's this bird, this 300-year-old bird that returns to the island every summer. Our 2 main characters, who are sisters. Every woman in the family, I believe, is born with a special talent, a special like magical talent. Next question is from Daisies and Dandelions. The question is, what do you personally think has been the most difficult or unexpected hurdle that's come along with having a booktube channel? Editing. Editing was like my main problem when I first started my channel. I just did not know how to edit. But besides that, I would definitely have to say my own personal insecurities and self-doubt. The biggest thing that I didn't realize I would have to deal with is how, once again, relating to editing, how I have to listen to my voice. And because, you know, when you're talking, when you're having a conversation with someone, you don't really pay attention to the way you sound. But it's when you're editing a video that you realize, do I really sound like that? Oh my God. Do I really look like that? Oh my God. So that was really hard for me. I have always been someone with a lot of insecurities about the way I look, the way I sound, the way I talk, and just getting over those things was incredibly hard when I first started my channel. And I can't really explain to you how I got over those things. I think it's just a matter of time and patience with myself and learning to love myself more. And yeah, but that was a very unexpected thing. I expected to have like technical difficulties because I'm not very technologically knowledgeable at all. Like I said, I didn't know how to edit. I barely knew how to post the video. I didn't know anything, okay, when it came to like the actual mechanics of uploading a video to my channel. But the unexpected side effects of just like my my self-esteem and dealing with self-doubt and am I really good enough to even do this, and why would anyone watch me, and just all of that. That was an unexpected hurdle that I had to jump over, and luckily I'm a lot better now. I still have like these moments where I'm like, you know, why am I even doing this when there's people out there that are so much better than me? You know what I mean? Why do people want to watch me? But for the most part, I've gotten a lot better. I've gotten a lot more secure in myself and what I have to offer. And so yeah, that was a big thing that I was dealing with when I first started out. Okay, next question is from Megan, and they ask, my question is, what is your fave childhood book? I've mentioned this before, I think, in a last question, but it was Alice in Wonderland. Honestly, one of my favorite books to this day. I reread Alice in Wonderland at least once a year. I don't think I even mention it anymore on my channel, but I read it often. It's one of those books that are just means so much to me on the inside and fill me with so much nostalgia. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, man. It's everything. It's everything to me. Okay, next is from Novia Taylor. They didn't ask a question, but they want a recommendation. I'd like some Latin American books to read that doesn't involve romance or food. Okay, here's the thing. I went through my shelves and through my Goodreads and realized that that is an area that I'm definitely lacking in. I have not read a lot of Latin American books. So I apologize for that. I'm going to work on that and read more. But I do have one book here. It does not involve romance or food, let me tell you. It's actually a horror. So I read this one pretty recently, like I think it was in December of last year, and that is The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. This takes place in Argentina. It's hard to explain. I was gonna say that it's kind of historical, but not really. There's a weird twist to this that I can't even describe, but I don't want to because I don't want to spoil it. But basically we're following a woman who gets a job as a teacher at this boarding school for girls set at the very southern tip of Argentina. It does deal with a lot of like the political climate during that time in South America, and creepy things start happening at the school, but then it turns into like something else. I don't want to spoil anything, so I can't really describe this well, but I definitely recommend this book. Laura N. Wright, love your name by the way, says, hi, I just found your channel thanks to Literature Science Alliance. Awesome. Book recommendation, I am looking for an easy to read fantasy wherein the characters and character development are a prominent aspect of the book and are written well, please. I want to recommend the entire Shadowhunter world. Shadowhunters are really on my mind right now because I just got my copy of Chain of Iron in the mail and I'm dying to read it. But Cassandra Clare wrote the entire Shadowhunter world. We've got the Mortal Instruments, we've got the Dark Artifices, we've got the Infernal Devices, and now we've got the Last Hours. And I think that they're YA. They're very easy to read and they're all about the characters. Yes, there's really great plots in a lot of the series and there's a lot going on, but it's really focused on the characters, interpersonal relationships. I think that that is a really good series to get into. I can't like specifically recommend the Mortal Instruments because I mean I loved them back in the day, but it's been so long since I've reread them. I don't know how they hold up, but I know that the Dark Artifices is probably my favorite series so far in the Shadowhunter world, and I really don't think that you have to read the Mortal Instruments if you don't want to. So the first book in the Dark Artifices, did I bring it? Yes, is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. I loved this book and my reading experience was just so great while reading this book. It is kind of a Annabelle Lee by Edgar Allan Poe retelling as well, which was so good. So I recommend this and like the entire world and series. I also want to recommend Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is one of my favorite books ever. Like top 5 favorites of all time. In this book we're following Laszlo Strange, who is a librarian. Laszlo is obsessed with this mythical city of Weep, and he is determined to find out more about it, and one day he gets the opportunity to, and I really don't want to say much more than that. You don't want to know much about this before you go into it. Just pick it up and discover it for yourself. But this is definitely very character focused and it deals with some very heavier topics, but in such a careful way. But it is incredibly beautiful, beautifully told, beautifully written, and it's very character focused. You will fall in love with Laszlo Strange. Laszlo is just this sweet, cinnamon roll, and you get to see him when he's a little kid, then you get to see him grown up, and I definitely think that this is a great character focused, very easy to read fantasy, and one of my absolute favorites. Okay, Emmy Reads says, the video you're most proud of. I am very proud of my vlogs in general. I typically here, I mean, if you're not new here, you know, I don't really do much outside of the box. I do wrap-ups, I do TBRs, I do book hauls, I do tags, like I do the basic booktube videos, and that's fine. But my vlogs are the one thing that I do that's like outside of, not so much outside of that, but just like different for me. And I'm really, really proud of my Fortnite Frights vlog. If you don't know, Fortnite Frights was a readathon that The Artisan Geek created and hosted in October of last year. It was a 2-week-long readathon. I did 2 separate vlogs. I think the first one is my favorite. I love vlogging, to be honest. I love vlogging. I know my vlogs don't get as many views, but I love vlogging. I love editing together a vlog. I don't have a lot of fun when it comes to editing because I just don't like editing. But when it comes to editing vlogs and like adding in music and taking different shots, I really love that. I'm really proud of the way my Fortnite Frights vlog came out. I thought it was just so beautifully done. I thought it was aesthetic. I thought the music was great. I really enjoy it. And I would love for it to get more love. So, you know, check it out if you want to, I don't know. All right, so next question is from Zalia. And their question is, do you prefer to read books online, Kindle or phone, or the physical book? Definitely the physical book. I don't mind reading ebooks, but I don't tend to read a lot of them because I just don't like the experience. Even though I think that when I'm reading an ebook, like on my phone, I end up reading faster. I haven't like timed it out to make sure, but I think that that's actually what happens. But I just love the experience of holding a book and flipping the pages and getting to see how far I've gotten in it. You know what I mean? I love the smell of books, and I just love physical editions of books. And also reading via ebook like hurts my eyes after a while. I have really bad eyesight. So yeah, that's staring at screens for too long is not good for me, but definitely the physical book. Also, what's your favorite book series and standalone? Oh God, that's mean. Like one, do I have to pick one? Because I can't do that. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern is definitely like my favorite book of all time. So favorite book, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Favorite book series. I'm gonna go with a series that's like not even completed yet, and that is the Stormlight Archive. I really don't think that I've connected to a fantasy series as much as the Stormlight Archive, with the mental health rep, with the magic, the cool world building, the characters. I love these characters so much. Like something happens to them and I die. Like I cry for hours. So the Stormlight Archive, there's 4 books out. It's by Brandon Sanderson, in case I didn't mention. There's 4 books out. It's gonna be a 10-book series eventually. It's not even finished yet, and I know, like, it's my favorite series. So maybe that was easier than I thought it was gonna be. Next is from Zahida. Question, what are the most struggles that faced you when you started your channel and how you managed them? So I did talk about this already. Someone asked a similar question. It was that the editing, the whole technological side of things, but definitely my own like insecurities and self-doubt and worrying about how I sound and how I look and how I'm coming across. That was definitely about how I managed it. Like I mentioned, it just took time. It took time for me to get comfortable with the camera. It took time for me to get comfortable putting myself out there. And that's basically it. Really. Recommendation, a feel-good book. It doesn't matter what genre. Something that'll just make you happy overall. Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Oh my goodness though. I just finished this book last night and I have to talk about it, okay? And that is Amari and the Night Brothers. This is a middle grade, but if you want to feel some type of way and you just want to be in love with stories, read Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. It's so good. And while we're on the topic of middle grade, I definitely recommend The Night Gardener by Jonathan Auxier. I recommend the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. And I recommend Circus Mirandus. I don't know the author off the top of my head, but I'll put a picture right here. Circus Mirandus. Such a beautiful book. It's also a middle grade. I don't tend to read a lot of feel-good books, to be honest, but when it comes to like middle grade, Those feel good. Nadia asked, what book is your comfort read? Nadia, The Night Circus. I go back to that book so many times. You don't even understand. Sometimes, okay, there's a lot of times where I don't talk to you guys about what I'm reading because I'm rereading the same things over and over again. On top of all the other books that I've read in the month, I'll pick up, I'll walk by my shelf and The Night Circus will just like look at me, and I'll pick it up and I'll start reading because I have it tabbed up. So I'll start reading like my favorite sections, and then I end up rereading the whole book in a day. So like The Night Circus is my comfort read. It's everything to me. I love the magic. Also, I've started doing that with The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I pick it up just to like read a quote because I want some of that beautifulness in my life, and end up rereading half the book in a night. So that happens, and I never talk about it. I don't know why, but I just never talk about it. And then Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Definitely a comfort read for me. Okay, then we have Mancy Ware. And they have asked, I'm a beginner to reading books. I would like to have your recommendation on a beginner-friendly book. And a lot of the books that I've mentioned already would definitely work well for this, but specifically the Shadowhunter World by Cassandra Clare. Here I go again, recommending that series. But I also recommend An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. I think that this is a really easy to get into fantasy. It's an adult fantasy. A Darker Shade of Magic, which I've mentioned before, by V.E. Schwab. Definitely think that this is a great like starter book. And I also recommend the Wayward Children series by Shauna McGuire. These are super easy to fall into, and I think you will absolutely love them, as well as Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. It's a YA, and the first book starts out like in our world, and then we get more magical as the series goes on, so I definitely think that's a good one to get into if you're just starting out. So there you go, there's a few for you. Okay, then the next question is from Chelsea, and they ask, from the time when you first started reading avidly to now, what has changed most about you as a reader? Preferences, how critically you read, etc. A lot has changed. One thing being genre preference. I think when I first started reading a lot again was when I picked up my first YA book, and then I got into Twilight because that was a thing that happened. And then from Twilight, I moved into the Shadowhunter books. That changed because before then, I wasn't reading a lot of fantasy. Before I like started reading Twilight and stuff like that, I was reading mostly contemporaries, mostly mysteries. I was a huge mystery fan. Like I went from reading, what was it called? Nancy Drew. I went from reading Nancy Drew as a 12-year-old to reading Agatha Christie as a 13-year-old, you know what I mean? So like mystery was my thing. I got into cozy mysteries, but once I started reading fantasy, my reading really took off. I had no idea that fantasy was my thing, and once I found out it was my thing, that was it, you know, that was it. As well as how critically I've read. I don't read critically, and I don't tend to, but when you read a lot, that tends to just happen naturally. You start analyzing things more, you start seeing patterns in the way authors write and the tropes that authors use. So I think that from the time I've started reading avidly again till now, it definitely takes a lot more to impress me. So I've seen so many of the same things that I do get more critical now about what I'm reading, and I think about things like the themes that the author's using, and I put a lot more on authors, which I don't think is a bad thing. I expect authors to deliver a certain product to me. I expect it to be well written, the characters well developed, but I also expect them to talk about things that are important, that are happening in our world, and to maybe put a different spin on it, put it in a different light so that we can compare it to our world. Those are the things that I look for now when I read books, and I never used to before. I just picked up a book and read it for fun, and I still read for fun, don't get me wrong, but like I definitely am a lot more critical than I have been before. And that is it, you guys. Those are all the questions and the book recommendations that I have gotten. Now, as I'm filming this, it is currently like 12 o'clock, so I did say I would give until the very end of the day on Thursday to enter the giveaway, so I'm going to wait until tomorrow. I'm going to edit what I have now, and then tomorrow I'm going to come back and I'm going to announce the winner, as well as answer any more questions if I happen to get any more between now and then, and give any more book recommendations if I have them. But for right now, that's it. So I will see you in the next clip. Okay, we are here to announce the winner of the giveaway, and the winner is, you ready, Liz? Can you say Anna? Anna Kaplan, congratulations, you are the winner of a $25 e-gift card. By the time you're seeing this, I probably will have already contacted you and let you know. So thank you guys so much for submitting questions and requests for book recommendations. I had so much fun putting this video together. I appreciate you guys so much, and thank you once again for helping us get to 1,000 subscribers. I love you guys. That is going to be it for this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys. Say bye.
Bye.